FPL managers, guys, what is up? Today we are looking at my game week 20 results and how I'm using my 4 free transfers going into game week 21. So guys, into the results. First of all, we did not have a good game week whatsoever, especially now that Chris Wood is still yet to play on Monday and he's the biggest threat to my rank. It could possibly get even worse. I mean, it's not the worst game week of game weeks, but it is pretty bad. I mean, Isak and Palmer returned in Saturday's games for me, but their ownership is so high it basically means nothing. And last game week I pondered going from Jackson to a cheap forward and going from Winks to Mbumo, but ultimately I decided against it because apparently I have no brain cells, and Mbumo went and bagged 17 more points than Jackson, so that one was a real kick in the teeth. On top of that, we did have Solanke though. Solanke's 9-pointer was the only good thing to come out of this game week. I mean, my rank would be so much worse without them Solanke points. So Solanke, thank you very much for the hard work you put into this team. I feel like Sanchez and Gvardiol, or at least one of them, could have kept a clean sheet. I mean, they both only conceded 1 goal. They kind of let me down a little bit, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. Chelsea keep getting clean sheet wipeouts in the last 10 minutes of the game, which is really frustrating. And West Ham didn't even need to score. They'd already lost the game. Like, they're just taking the piss at this point and just ruining my FPL rank for fun. Ismail Sarr has blanked in my team twice in a row, but there's ED games coming up. There's still some hope for him. As for Sunday's games, Salah got points. Doesn't mean anything again because his ownership is so high. Trent had the worst game of his life. As a United fan, I'm quite happy. We somehow got 1 point at Anfield. And then we had Calvin Bassey, who also did absolutely nothing, but I wasn't really expecting much from him anyway. So yeah, overall, not a great game week, but I have had a lot of green arrows in the past 10 game weeks, so I can't complain too much. Overall, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it depends how well Chris Wood does. Anyway, guys, let's get into the transfer plans. Looking at how the team lines up for game week 21, I'm pretty happy with it. I've got a good bunch of players with me. I mean, I do have some players with tough fixtures which definitely needs addressing. For example, we've got Trent playing away to Nottingham Forest and Salah playing away to Nottingham Forest, which does create a big captaincy dilemma as well, because normally it's just automatically captain Salah. But, you know, Isak and Palmer now put themselves in the mix for being a good captaincy option, or the best captaincy option for game week 21. But I'm going to make a whole video on that, analysing who is the best captaincy option, looking at Isak, Palmer and Salah, looking at their expected data, and looking at the defensive data of the teams they're playing against. Right now, I've got it on Isak because that's my assumption as to who's going to be the best one, but that could easily change. So yes, stay tuned for that one. Anyway, back onto my team now. We also have Solanke playing away to Arsenal, which is the biggest concern here. Now, I brought in Solanke 2 game weeks ago, and I knew this day would come. I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew Solanke would be playing away to Arsenal in game week 21. But I also thought to myself, well, I'm going to have 4 free transfers and I'm going to have some money in the bank. I've got 0.5 million in the bank, so I'm going to be able to deal with it. And while that is true, I can deal with it quite easily. Looking at my bench, I've got Gvardiol, I've got Calvin Bassey, and I've got Harry Winks. These are 3 outfield players I can use to bring in a new outfield player for me, specifically a midfielder in place of Harry Winks, to replace Solanke for this game week while he's playing away to Arsenal, because playing away to Arsenal is insanely tough. And it can also work out in game week 22 when Rodgers also plays away to Arsenal, so I've got good bench cover for both those game weeks and I can play players with only good fixtures, or, you know, mostly good fixtures. But then I got to thinking, I mean, Solanke's done well against Newcastle and that was a tough game. But what if Solanke also gets points against Arsenal and he's going to be sat on my bench and I've used 2 free transfers to just worsen my score? You know, it's something that's been in the back of my mind, and now the opportunity to get rid of Solanke and put him on my bench is actually here. I'm reluctant to do it because he could get points on my bench. But the thing is, if I don't use any free transfers this week, I go into next game week with 5 free transfers, and I don't really plan on using a free transfer in game week 22. So I'll be burning a transfer, which is something I refuse to let myself do. So the most likely scenario still is using the players on my bench and the 0.5 I have in the bank to bring in a new midfielder for Harry Winks, just for bench cover in game week 21 and game week 22, but also to be a good medium to long term option for me. And I've come up with 2 ideas. So idea number 1, as you can see on the screen here and as you saw in the title, it was AMAD versus Martinelli. So this is the AMAD option, the AMAD route, and all we need to do is sell Bassey and Winks, 2, you know, options I'm never going to use, and in return I get Greaves for Calvin Bassey, saving me 0.6 million. Then add that to the 0.5 I already have. I can sell Harry Winks up to Amad Diallo for 2 games where he plays home to Southampton and home to Brighton for amazing bench cover for me, and it's a really tempting option. He also provides me with like a lot more squad depth as well, like a lot more, so I can use him in the future. And I mean, looking at his next 6 game weeks, there's not a single red fixture in sight. I mean, his expected data isn't amazing. We'll look more at it later, but Man United have had a rough 4 games, and I don't think his expected data or his underlying data is a sign of what's to come. I think it is going to get better, but we'll compare it to Martinelli's later on. This also allows me to keep Gvardiol in my team, who has Ipswich next game week. So there's some advantages to this method, but there's also some disadvantages as well, because going for Martinelli could easily be the better option. But what I like about AMAD in particular is that he started the last 5 games, started them as an inside forward. He's got reliable minutes, a lot more reliable than Martinelli, and he is insanely cheap. Once again, like I said, it lets me keep Gvardiol, and it's not, you know, an expensive player to have on my bench. If I had a player like Martinelli sitting on my bench most weeks and he's 7 million, that's money wasted. With AMAD, it's only 5.3 million. It's not that deep really, you know, it's a player who you can expect to have on your bench. So let's look at the next option now, guys. You can see it right here. Basically, it's the exact same, but instead of going from Calvin Bassey to Greaves, we're going from Gvardiol to Greaves, which does make my team slightly weaker, but Gvardiol really isn't going to last past game week 23. If you look at his game week 23 fixture run onwards, it's, you know, it's a storm. Let's be honest, it's not a good fixture run at all, and he will be going soon anyway, so it's not the end of the world. But what this does, it allows me to spend more money on a midfielder, and to be honest, in my range, my budget of only 7.1 million, there's only one that I like more than Amad Diallo, but it's a riskier option than Amad Diallo. It's Gabriel Martinelli. Now, he is a slight minutes risk, but with Saka injured, Martinelli has started 4 of the last 5 games, so it's safe to say he probably will start pretty much every game until Saka comes back. You know, don't hold me to that, but it's the most likely scenario if we're being honest. But Martinelli is on good form. He has scored 2 goals in the last 3 games, and for a 7 million player, or 6.8 to be exact, it's not bad at all. My problem with Arsenal is that they don't score a lot of goals from open play whatsoever. I mean, looking at their expected points in the last 5 games, it's all topped by the defenders, which is unheard of. Normally it's teams' attackers that get more expected points, but because the Arsenal defence is so solid, and, you know, they sacrifice a lot going forward for it, the Arsenal forwards don't really have a lot going for them in general. I mean, Martinelli is probably the best option in the Arsenal attack. I mean, Gabriel Jesus is also pretty good, but, you know, I don't see him lasting too long. He's usually a player that underperforms his expected goals. Right now, he's got 3 from 1.7 as of I'm recording this, so he's doing quite a big of a performance, which is very rare for Gabriel Jesus, but, you know, who am I to judge? Maybe he becomes a great goal scorer this season. Anyway, guys, this is how my team is looking to line up in game week 21 as of right now. I'm preferring the Amad Diallo option, to be honest, guys. He's more reliable, more guaranteed minutes. He's not on great form right now, but his fixture run, I think I prefer it a little more than Martinelli's. I mean, we haven't looked at Martinelli's yet. Let's take a look at it now. I mean, it's not too bad at all. It's still pretty good, but the Amad Diallo fixture run, the entry point where you have a home game to Southampton and a home game to Brighton, who are off form right now, it's a good couple games that Man United could use as a turning point to turn their team around, and Amad Diallo, being the second best attacker in that team behind Bruno, you know, I'm quite optimistic that he could bag me some points. We'd be lining up in a 3-5-2 with Solanke and Gvardiol on the bench, which is a little scary because they're both capable of getting a good amount of points regardless of who they play against, but I very much doubt either of them are going to get a return. I mean, I know I talk about how I'm scared of Solanke getting a return playing away to Arsenal, but if we look at the Arsenal defensive numbers right here, it is ridiculous. They nearly have more expected clean sheets than expected goals conceded, and I don't know how much you guys are into your, you know, underlying data, but that is ridiculous. Like, no team even comes close to that. So the likelihood of Tottenham even scoring 1 goal is quite unlikely, to be honest. I think it's going to be an Arsenal clean sheet, but who knows? North London derbies can sometimes be quite unpredictable. And if we compare the Amad Diallo data in the last 5 games to the Gabriel Martinelli data in the last 5 games, like I said, I mean, there's not a whole lot to separate them, but Martinelli's is clearly a bit on the better side. But like I said, Amad Diallo and Man United, they've had a rough few games. I don't think they're going to continue like that. So I prefer Amad Diallo. He's better value for money and he's more reliable. So guys, let me know what you think of my transfer plans. Do you think I'm making the right move in using 2 free transfers to bring in Amad Diallo with my bench players? I am going to always have a good asset on my bench now, which is quite worrying, but the squad depth is also a big advantage for when my players have tough games. If you did make it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.